Hello, friend. Before we begin this journey through emotion and reflection, make sure to subscribe and share the story if it touches your soul. Now, close your eyes and let the story guide you. It always began the same way. The sound of the bell above the cafe door, the smell of cinnamon and old wood, and the quiet hum of Saturday morning in Asheville. Emma and Claire had made this their ritual. Same table by the window. 2 mugs, black coffee for Emma, oat milk latte for Claire, and the kind of silence that only exists between people who have known each other long enough not to fill every gap with words. They had met years ago at a small liberal arts college tucked into the hills, bonded by shared majors, broken hearts, and long drives through misty mountain roads. Now in their early 30s, they still met once a week, as if holding on to this one thread could keep the whole tapestry of their lives from unraveling. Claire looked different that morning. Not just the way her hair curled more neatly, or how her fingers brushed her coffee cup. It was something in her eyes, quieter, steadier. Emma noticed. She always noticed. "You look like someone who has a secret," Emma said, half smiling, trying not to sound like she already knew what it was. Claire hesitated, then lifted her left hand gently, as if afraid the light might shatter it. "A simple ring." Emma stared. "Wow," she said, voice soft. "It's real." Claire nodded. "Thomas asked last night." There was no squealing, no dramatic gasps. That wasn't their way. Just a pause, a look, a soft exhale of something too complicated to name. "I'm happy for you," Emma said, and she meant it. Mostly. But behind her smile was something quieter. A flicker of thought she didn't want to think. Not now. Not here. Because while Claire had Thomas, kind, consistent, gentle Thomas, Emma had Dean. And Dean wasn't the kind of man who bought rings. He was the kind who disappeared for days and came back with stories. The kind who made you feel alive and unsteady all at once. But Emma never talked about Dean. Not in the cafe, not with Claire. It was the one thing she kept wrapped tight. So she raised her cup, clinked it lightly against Claire S., and said, "To the brave ones who still believe in love." Claire smiled, but she was watching her friend now, the flicker in her eyes, the tight grip on her cup, the shadow of something unspoken. And outside the cafe window, the morning light slid across the mountains like a secret trying to reveal itself. Claire hadn't planned on falling in love that afternoon. It was a quiet Tuesday, the kind that felt like it could slip between the cracks of memory. Unnoticed, unremarkable. She had ducked into a small used bookstore on Lexington Avenue, chasing the smell of old pages and escaping the cold. That's where she saw him, seated on the floor between poetry and philosophy, flipping through a worn copy of Rilke. He looked up, just a glance, and it wasn't the usual kind of glance, the ones filled with calculation or assumption. It was simple, soft, like he was used to seeing people as they were, not as they tried to be. Claire almost walked past, but he spoke. "Do you read him?" he asked, holding up the book. "Letters to a Young Poet." "I used to," Claire replied, her voice cautious, but curious. "In college, when I thought poetry could save me." His smile was slow, thoughtful. "Sometimes I still think it can." That was the beginning. No fireworks, no instant knowing. Just small conversations in quiet corners. About Neruda and Wendell Berry. About hiking trails. And why people talk too loudly in quiet places. His name was Thomas. He was kind in a way that didn't draw attention to itself. He never tried to impress. He asked questions. He listened, really listened. And he remembered things, small things. The way she stirred her tea. The book she mentioned offhandedly. Her habit of touching the necklace her mother gave her when she was nervous. Emma, of course, had been skeptical. She always was. So what's his flaw? She had asked one evening, their legs curled on Emma's couch, an old jazz record playing in the background. "I don't know yet," Claire had said, smiling. "Maybe he's just good." Emma scoffed playfully. "Nobody's just good, Claire. That's not how people work." But Claire didn't argue, because deep down she hoped maybe, just maybe, some people were good. Not perfect, not without pain or shadows, just good. Meanwhile, Emma hadn't mentioned Dean at all that night. Claire didn't ask, but she noticed the way Emma checked her phone once, then again, and again. The way her laughter felt forced. The way she excused herself to the balcony, whispering fast and low into the night air. Thomas had gentle eyes. Dean had storms behind his. And as the days passed, the contrast became clearer. Even if neither of them was ready to speak it aloud. It was Claire's idea, a weekend escape, just the two of them. No men, no drama, no responsibilities. "Let's go somewhere that feels like we're 20 again," she had said. Before all of this, life, they chose Nashville, not for the honky-tonks or the tourist lights, but for the in-between places, the hidden cafes, the slow jazz bars tucked behind bookstores, the rooftop patios where the stars still dared to show up. They arrived late on a Friday. Claire drove. Emma watched the road pass in silence, her playlist playing softly voices of women who had loved too hard and paid the price. By the time they reached the hotel, Emma had already checked her phone 6 times. Dean hadn't replied. Not since yesterday. "Maybe his signal's bad," Claire said gently as they unpacked. Emma didn't respond. She just smiled, a hollow, practiced thing, and changed the subject. That night, they wandered the city, laughed, danced, took blurry photos in front of neon signs. For a few hours, they were girls again, not women weighed down by the choices of their hearts. But back in the hotel room, the silence returned. Emma sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling, waiting. The glow of the screen lit up her face, not in hope, but in need. And then, finally, a message. "Sorry, babe. Can't make it this weekend. Family stuff." Rain check. No apology, no explanation, no feeling. Just cold words from a man who always seemed somewhere else when she needed him here. Emma stared at the message, and something inside her wilted. Claire, already curled up under the covers, watched quietly. "You okay?" she asked. Emma didn't answer. Not at first. Then she turned off her phone and lay down beside her friend, eyes open to the ceiling. "I don't think he knows how to love me," she whispered. Claire reached over and took her hand, a simple, wordless gesture that said, "I know. I've seen it. I'm still here." And in the hush of that Nashville night, as the city moved on without them, Emma felt the first small crack in the illusion she had been clinging to. It didn't hurt the way she expected. It just emptied something. They returned to Asheville under a gray sky. Claire went home to Thomas, where the kettle was already whistling, and the hallway smelled like cinnamon and pine. Emma went back to her apartment, where silence waited like a roommate she didn't choose. The days passed, each one quieter than the last. The texts from Dean came slower, shorter, emptier, and still Emma defended them. "He's just busy," she would say. "He's under a lot of pressure. He's not like most guys." But Claire had seen it before, in others, and in herself. The signs were always the same. Emma smiled less. She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. She started wearing long sleeves, even when the spring sun touched the trees. Claire didn't ask why, not directly. But she noticed the way Emma's hands trembled when she poured her tea. One evening, as they walked by the river, Claire finally said it. "I don't think he's good for you, Em." Emma stopped walking. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes did, sharp, distant, guarded. "Not everyone finds a Thomas," she said, the words like stones in her mouth. Claire didn't respond right away. She let the silence speak first. Then softly, "It's not about Thomas. It's about you. You deserve better than waiting on someone who forgets to see you." Emma looked away, out at the water. The current was fast that day, wild and unsettled. "I don't know what I'd even be without him," she whispered. Claire heard the truth in those words, and it scared her, not because Emma didn't know, but because she'd forgotten how to ask. That night, Claire wrote a letter. She didn't send it, just tucked it into her journal. Loving someone shouldn't feel like erasing yourself to be enough. She hoped Emma would remember that one day, before it was too late. It wasn't a church, not in the traditional sense, just a converted warehouse on the edge of town where people gathered on Sundays, not for sermons, but for conversations about love, life, healing, things too messy for pews and pulpits. Claire invited Emma once, gently, no pressure. "There's a talk this weekend," she said. "Thomas is speaking. It's not religious, just real." Emma hesitated, but something in her, maybe exhaustion, maybe curiosity, made her say yes. The space was warm, sun filtering through high windows. People sat in a circle, sipping tea. No one asked questions. No one judged. Emma liked that. Thomas spoke simply. He talked about love as presence. How it isn't just about showing up on the good days, but holding space on the hard ones. He said love isn't fireworks or grand gestures. It's kindness in conflict. It's listening when you'd rather win. It's being the calm in someone else's storm, without becoming the storm yourself. Emma sat near the back, arms folded. She listened, but she didn't nod. Not once. And then he said something that landed like thunder in her chest. Love should feel safe. That was it, 5 words, quiet, gentle. But they shattered something. Emma stood up and left. Claire followed a few minutes later, finding her near the side door, staring at the sky. Too much? Claire asked softly. Emma shrugged, eyes red but dry. He doesn't know me. He doesn't know what it's like to love someone who disappears, but you still wait. Claire didn't argue. She just stood beside her, letting the silence settle between them. After a moment, Emma whispered, "If love is supposed to feel safe, then what have I been calling love all this time?" She didn't wait for an answer. Maybe she didn't need one. That night, alone in her apartment, Emma sat in the dark and replayed that one sentence again and again. And for the first time, it didn't feel like an insult. It felt like an invitation. It was always like this. He'd disappear for days, no calls, no explanations, and then show up like nothing happened. A knock on the door, a half smile, that look in his eyes that made her forget she was angry. Dean returned on a Tuesday, rain tapping on her windows. Emma wrapped in an old sweater, half asleep on the couch. She hadn't expected him. She never really did. He stood there, soaked and beautiful, with that tired charm that made her heart ache. "Missed you," he said, as if the silence between them hadn't screamed for days. She didn't know what to say. Her throat tightened, but she stepped aside. He walked in like he always did, like the place belonged to him. Like she belonged to him. He talked about a trip to Charlotte, about crazy family drama, about how his phone died. Excuses dressed as stories. Half-truths wrapped in a voice she wanted to believe. And when he leaned in to kiss her, she let him. Not because she trusted him, but because it was easier than asking questions she already knew the answers to. Later that night, as they lay in the dark, his arm draped across her waist, she stared at the ceiling, the same ceiling she stared at after every return, and she thought about Thomas's words again. Love should feel safe. She didn't feel safe. She felt tired, tired of wondering, tired of shrinking herself to avoid arguments, tired of rewriting his absence as mystery instead of neglect. She turned her head slightly, looking at Dean's sleeping face. Peaceful, untouched by the storm he left behind every time. He loved her in his own way. She didn't doubt that. But maybe that wasn't enough. Maybe his way was never meant to be hers. And somewhere in the quiet of that night, something inside her started to shift. not like an earthquake, more like a crack in the ice, soft, subtle, but irreversible. It was supposed to be just dinner. Claire invited Emma and Dean to join her and Thomas at a quiet Italian place nestled in the hills just outside Asheville. The kind of place with candlelight and soft violin music where time seemed to slow down. Emma didn't want to go. She knew what it would be like before they even walked in. The comparison she wasn't ready to face. But Dean said yes for them both, eager for free wine and a night out that required no effort on his part. Claire and Thomas were already seated when they arrived. Thomas stood, shook Dean's hand politely. Claire hugged Emma, long and gentle, like she always did. The conversation was easy at first, about work, local events. A funny story from Thomas's latest hiking trip. But beneath it all, something pulsed quietly. Emma saw it in the way Claire and Thomas looked at each other, not in a showy way, but in the small glances. The warmth passed between them like second nature. At one point, Claire touched Thomas's hand across the table mid-laugh. Just a brush of fingers. He looked at her like she was his whole world, and for a moment, everything in Emma went still. She looked at Dean, sitting beside her. He was on his phone, scrolling, not even pretending to care about the conversation. When she nudged him lightly, he looked up and gave her a smile, the kind you give a stranger in an elevator. Then he returned to his screen. And that was it. That was the moment. Not a fight, not a betrayal. Just a look across the table that said, "This is what it could feel like. This is what it's supposed to feel like." Later, as they drove home in silence, Emma watched the trees pass through the window, dark shapes against the night. "I think I'm in the wrong story," she whispered. Dean didn't hear her. Or maybe he chose not to. But the truth had finally landed. Soft, inevitable, real. Emma didn't sleep that night. The moonlight spilled across her floor like a quiet witness, watching her move from one room to another, restless and unfinished. Dean had left just after midnight, saying he was meeting a friend for drinks. No explanation, no apology. She didn't ask questions this time. She simply nodded and let the door close behind him. The silence was louder now, no longer peaceful, but hollow. And in that emptiness, she heard herself, the version she used to be, the one before him. Emma sat at her vanity, the soft yellow light casting a shadow across her face. She looked at her reflection like it belonged to someone else. She wasn't angry, she was tired. Tired of the waiting. Tired of hoping he'd become something he never promised to be. Tired of pretending love meant suffering through silence and calling it strength. There had been a time when she believed love had to be earned, when she thought being patient enough, forgiving enough, quiet enough would fix what was broken. But now she could see it clearly. You don't have to disappear to deserve love. And maybe the problem wasn't just Dean. Maybe it was the part of her that kept opening the door. She opened her journal, untouched for months, and wrote one sentence: "I am not hard to love." She stared at it, read it again, louder this time in her head, and then she cried, not for Dean, but for the girl who stayed too long, for the girl who thought being chosen was more important than choosing herself. In the stillness of the early morning, Emma stood by her window. The moon was fading, making room for light, and somewhere deep inside her, something else began to rise. Not joy, not yet, but strength. It wasn't a fight. There were no shattered plates, no screaming accusations, no slammed doors. Just two people sitting across from each other in a coffee shop off Main Street. The kind with crooked tables and handwritten menus. Dean showed up 10 minutes late, as usual. Emma didn't mind. Not anymore. He smiled like everything was normal. Ordered a drink. Started talking about a new project he might start if things settled down, if life ever slowed. Emma listened, not with anger, but with clarity. The words rolled off him like mist, vague, effortless, empty. Then he said something that should have broken her. "You know I'm trying, right?" And for the first time, she saw it for what it was. A rope thrown too late to someone already learning how to swim. She looked at him, really looked, and she didn't see the man she loved anymore. She saw a pattern, a loop, a lesson. "I know," she said gently. "I believe you are, but it's not enough." Dean leaned back, confused. "What's that supposed to mean?" Emma smiled, not to soften the blow, but because it felt honest. "It means I'm tired of shrinking, just to make space for the version of you I hoped would show up." He didn't speak. She didn't need him to. She stood, picked up her bag, and looked around the cafe once more. Familiar, safe, small. "I hope you find what you're looking for," she said. "But I'm not it. Not like this." And just like that, she walked away. No grand finale. No applause. Just a girl choosing herself in the quietest way possible. Outside, the wind felt different, like it was moving with her this time, not against. Claire called later that night. She didn't ask questions. She just said, "You okay?" Emma smiled softly. "I think I will be." Spring came slow that year. The mountains turned green again, and the wind smelled like honeysuckle and beginnings. Claire and Emma sat on the same bench by the river, where, months ago, a different version of them had watched the water move too fast to understand. Now the current still ran strong, but Emma didn't feel afraid of it anymore. She was quieter these days, but not in the same way. Not from fear, not from confusion, but from peace. A kind of stillness that grows only after a storm. Claire brought coffee, as she always did. They sipped in silence, not needing to fill the air. It was enough just to be. "Funny, isn't it?" Emma said eventually. "How long I thought love was supposed to hurt." Claire glanced over, her smile soft. "Sometimes it teaches us by breaking us first." Emma nodded. I thought choosing myself meant giving up, but it didn't. It just meant I was ready to stop surviving and start living. Claire didn't reply right away. She just reached over and held Emma's hand. The same hand that used to tremble, now steady. In the distance, a couple walked past them, laughing. The girl had red hair and a clumsy gait. The boy held her hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. Emma watched them, but she didn't ache. Not anymore. She thought of Dean once. Just a flicker, a shadow in the corner of memory. She hoped he was healing, too, in his own time, in his own way. But he was no longer her weight to carry. As the sun began to lower behind the hills, Claire spoke quietly. You didn't just walk away from him. You walked toward yourself. Emma exhaled. That was the truth. The kind that doesn't shout. The kind that settles deep in the bones. And as the wind moved through the trees like a soft song, the two friends sat side by side. Not the same girls who had gone into the forest that night, but stronger, wiser, whole, and in the end, she didn't walk away to punish him. She walked away to find herself. Remember, love should never shrink you. It should help you grow into all that you are meant to be. If this story moved something inside you, subscribe, share, and let someone else feel what you just felt. Until the next story, take care of your heart